Much ink has been spilled the past few years over the threat of foreign influence in our politics. It's a topic I've spoken about many times on this floor. This issue has become highly politicized, but it requires bipartisan agreement to address. It's increasingly clear that our adversaries will stop at nothing to influence political discourse in our country. We can all agree that there's a real need to improve our nation's foreign influence laws. Fortunately, the Senate has a real opportunity today to finally do something about it. In 1938, Congress passed the Foreign Agents Registration Act, referred to by the acronym FARA. They did this in 1938 to expose Nazi propaganda and identify foreign attempts to influence policymakers and the American public. The bill was last updated in 1966, now requires those who lobby on behalf of foreign governments and interests to register affiliations and activities with the Justice Department. FARA reflects the fundamental principles that transparency brings accountability. Until recently, however, the law had been seldom used, and a few on K Street paid little attention to the necessity of registering under this act if they were lobbying for a foreign country. Of course, that's not due to a lack of foreign influence efforts. Given FARA's important transparency provisions, its lack of enforcement was shocking to me, and that's the problem that these several legislators sponsoring this legislation are trying to correct. I first raised concerns about lackluster FARA enforcement in April 2015 when former Clinton White House staffer and lawyer for a Georgian political party failed to register as foreign agents. I also raised concerns about work for Ukrainians by Paul Manafort and the Podesta Group. I raised concerns when the firm behind the discredited Steele dossier failed to register for its lobbying work to repeal U.S. sanctions against Russia. I even subpoenaed Manafort to testify at the Judiciary Committee hearing on the lax FARA enforcement. I praised Mueller for dusting off the law that had been ignored for so long. I've conducted FARA oversight without regard to power, party, or privilege. Americans expect equal application of the law, no matter which political party someone is affiliated with. I'm an equal opportunity overseer. FARA ought to be better enforced and equally enforced. That's why my office worked thoroughly to expose holes in the existing FARA law and find ways to shore it up. My bipartisan Foreign Agents Disclosure Registration Enforcement Act is the product of years of oversight and policy work. The bill requires the Justice Department for the first time to craft a comprehensive FARA enforcement strategy and to release advisory opinions to promote transparency. It gives FARA investigators new tools, including civil investigative demand authority, to help identify violations. The bill appropriately limits those who in the Justice Department can use this authority and provides essential due process protections. In fact, it's based on identical authorities in the False Claims Act, which I sponsored now 35 years ago, which for years, that False Claims Act has helped to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. The bill also enhances penalties for FARA violations to deter future abuses. It requires foreign agents to immediately disclose their clients. That way, policymakers know the true source and can make the most informed decisions. Finally, It requires a review of Lobbying Disclosure Act exemptions to determine whether it's been abused to conceal foreign influence efforts. Legitimate interest engaging in legitimate conduct shouldn't bear any unnecessary burden. That's why our bill strikes a real and right balance. But we must also ensure that FAIR's exemptions haven't created loopholes for foreign governments to hide their true intentions. I'm pleased to have the support from the chairman and ranking member of Judiciary Committee, the chairman and vice chairman of the Intelligence Committee. We have bipartisan support for on the Foreign Relations Committee, including Senators Shaheen, Rubio, Murphy, and Young, who've all worked to shine light on foreign influence. And we now have the sign-off of the chairman of that committee, along with support from this administration. Groups like the Project for Government Oversight and another group that goes by the name of Issue One endorse the measure, saying, quote, it directly addresses structural weaknesses of fairness. This is truly a bipartisan bill with common ground where it's usually tough to find it. The Senate should send a clear signal today that it's serious about shining a light on foreign influence by passing this bill. And before I make a UC request, I'd like to ask one of the leaders in this area, Senator Cornyn, to make comments, and then I'll do the UC request.